Hello friends, myself Dr. Laxmidhar Behera from Regional Institute of Education NCERT Bhubaneswar along with National Resource Center for Education Central University of South Bihar welcome you in the course Latest Trends in Pedagogy and Assessment. Friends, we have already completed one session on understanding learner-centered pedagogy. In the last session, we have discussed the concept, rationale, and role of teachers in learner-centered pedagogy. The present session will be focusing on strategies of learner-centered pedagogy. We consider many criteria, sometimes consciously, sometimes intuitively, in making pedagogical choices. These criteria might include, firstly, appropriateness of the content or subject, like in a science course, a hands-on pedagogy for students to perform experiments and experience lab activities. Secondly, the degree to which it addresses particular learning outcomes, such as common core or standards. The learning outcomes document developed by NCERT recently is one of the examples. Age appropriateness of the grade level which is taught. Evidence that the pedagogy contributes to students' achievement, like past experiences, readings, advice from colleagues. Alignment with the teacher's educational philosophy or views on education, like for a student-centered teaching philosophy, encouraging students to be active learners. As we know, learner-centered pedagogy include many things like active learning, in which students solve problems, answer questions, formulate questions of their own, discuss, explain, debate, or brainstorm during the classes. Cooperative learning, in which students work in teams on problems and projects under conditions that assure both positive interdependence and individual accountability. And inductive teaching and learning, in which students are first presented with challenges that may include questions or problems, and they learn the course material in the context of addressing the challenges. Inductive methods may include inquiry-based learning, case-based instruction, problem-based learning, project-based learning, and discovery learning. Learner-centered pedagogy approaches have repeatedly been shown to be superior to traditional teacher-centered approach of instructions. Whether the assessed outcome is short-term mastery, long-term retention, or depth of understanding of course material, acquisition of critical thinking, or creative problem-solving skills, formation of positive attitudes towards a subject being taught, or level of confidence in knowledge or skills, these pedagogic approaches are very much useful. So here are some of the examples and strategies of learner-centered pedagogic processes. There are 4 major types of instructional strategies that have been used to promote greater student engagement in the classroom. Whole class discussion, small group discussion, collaborative learning groups, and cooperative learning groups. Let us discuss why and how each of these learner-centered pedagogy can be effectively used in the classroom. First one is coming whole class discussion. Students learn through communicating. When they discuss their ideas, listen to different perspectives, and engage in sense making, students deepen their understanding and reflection of subject or content. Teachers interested in helping students learn subject more effectively have many questions when approached with the concept of using whole class discussions to facilitate understanding content. These questions may come to teachers' mind. For example, what do students gain from whole class discussion? How can you support students in learning through whole class discussion? What do you need to do in order to be effectively using whole class discussion in the classroom? Students develop an understanding of subject or theme when they talk about it, listen to others, and observe a variety of representations. Whole class discussions lead to the development of a more sophisticated understanding of subject and build on students' thinking by addressing different strategies and errors that is committed by the students. The characteristic of students' effective whole class discussion are: here discussion is open-ended with many opportunities for students to present multiple perspectives. Students here engage in sense making and explore a problem or issue. The purpose of the discussion is to explore and understand the problem or issue. Here teachers acts as facilitator by scaffolding the discussion in order to lead students to make connections with the past and future experiences. Students explore how to solve problems and understand why the approach works. The process of planning and conducting an effective whole class discussion will be discussed here. First one is planning prior to discussion. Here we identify long-term and short-term goals. We consider curricular tasks and anticipate student reasoning. While planning during the lesson, we assess students' reasoning errors, misconceptions. We identify topic for discussion, problem to discuss, and think about how the sequence in the discussion. Whole class discussion may focus on facilitating connections, pose questions or issue to start discussion, and whole class discussions are much easier to facilitate if the physical space in the classroom has been set up for discussion. In addition, the teacher also develops to cultivate an appropriate social environments for discussion by establishing routines that make decision easier. So next, small group discussions. The major limitations of whole class discussion is that it involves students on an individual and sequential basis. For example, like one student raises a hand and makes a contribution, followed by the instructor calling a second student who makes a contribution. In contrast to this sequential involvement of the individual students, when discussion takes place in the small group, for example, small group like 2 or 3 students, multiple student becomes involved simultaneously in a meaningful way. The need to augment whole class discussion with small group work is supported by many researches, which indicates that typically less than 10% of students in class account for more than 75% of all contributions made during the classroom discussions and processes. Small group discussion can provide an antidote to these disturbing findings by creating better opportunities for all students, not just the most assertive or most verbal, to become involved with the course material and with other in the classroom processes. Collaborative learning groups. Collaborative learning may be a small group learning experience in which group members reach consensus with respect to some decision or actions. The key feature differentiating a discussion from a collaborative learning group is the latter doesn't simply generate or aggregate individual ideas. Instead, its members attempt to use and reach a unified group decision with respect to the ideas they generate. For example, rather than simply aggregating their ideas, a collaborative group will take it further by attempting to reach agreement on how best to categorize or prioritize their ideas. Collaborative learning is a more generalized approach than the cooperative learning approach. This approach provides a situation in which 2 or more people learn and attempt to learn together. Unlike individual learning, people engaged in collaborative learning capitalize one another's resources and skills. For example, asking one another for information, evaluating ideas, and monitoring one another's work. Collaborative learning is helpful and knowledge can be created within a population where members actively interact by sharing experiences and take nearly equal roles. Thus, collaborative learning is a method of teaching and learning in which students and teachers team together to explore a significant question or create a meaningful project. Groups of students discussing a lecture or students from different schools working together over the internet on a shared assignment in social studies are both examples of collaborative learning. Let us have a discussion on the cooperative learning. The cooperative learning model was developed to achieve at least 3 important instructional goals: academic achievement, acceptance of diversity, and social skill development. The specific small group approach incorporates democratic processes, individual accountability, equal opportunities, and group rewards. A number of types of cooperative learning activities and models are frequently used in today's classroom, such as student team achievement divisions, jigsaw, and group investigations. All cooperative learning lessons, however, have key features like students work in groups to master academic materials. Here, groups are heterogeneous, consisting of high, average, and low achiever students. Whenever possible, teams include a mix of racial, cultural, or gender contexts. Reward systems are group oriented rather than individual oriented. Let us have a discussion why cooperative learning is useful in today's classroom. The best place to start in trying to use cooperative learning effectively is to first understand the purpose of such a methodology. There are four main reasons why cooperative learning is to be recommended. First, more children actively learning here. In cooperative learning, it helps actively engage more children in learning than do teacher-centered or lecture-oriented methodologies. In using the latter, it is usually only possible to actively engage at most one or two students in active learning situations. By using more cooperating methodologies in which students work together in groups, all students are actively engaged on a learning task or activity. Students become more active participant in their own learning situations as opposed to passive recipient of knowledge who only listen, observe, and take notes. Children learn to help one another. Cooperative learning encourages students to support their classmates in a group rather than to compete against each other. In this way, students can combine their talents and help each other. So next one, child to child learning supports. It is possible through cooperative learning. So cooperative learning provides the opportunity for higher achieving students to help students who are slow learners. These higher achieving students can probably communicate more easily with their peers rather than the teacher. The help of these students also increases the amount of explanation that occurs in overall classroom processes. Fourthly, the improved classroom motivation through success. Cooperative learning helps to improve the motivation of many students by offering the opportunity to more students to experience the joy of winning. For example, the case of cooperative activities that require games and academic success. In classroom where students are only allowed to compete individually, only the few high achieving students will likely to have experiences. In classrooms where students are divided into cooperating teams, each with its high and low achieving students, the opportunity to succeed is more evenly distributed. Cooperative and collaborative learning differ from traditional teaching approaches where students work together rather than compete with each other. The major differences between collaborative and cooperative approaches is to be known by all of us. So firstly, collaborative learning can take place anytime and students work together. For example, when they help each other with homework. Cooperative learning takes place when students work together in the same place on a structured project or a small group work. Collaborative learning is more a qualitative approach, analyzing students' talk in response to a place in literature or a primary source in history. The cooperative learning, on the other hand, tends to use quantitative methods which look at achievement, that is the product of learning. In the collaborative learning approach, once the task is set with which is always open-ended, the teacher transforms all authority to the group. It is up to the group to plan and perform the task as per their combined efforts. In the cooperative learning approach, the authority remains with the teacher who retains ownership of the task, and he or she continuously monitor, guide, and suggest modifications to keep the group on track for solving the problem. Collaborative learning truly empowers students, whereas cooperative learning doesn't. Instead, cooperative learning employs them to serve the teacher's ends and produces a right or acceptable answer. Collaboration in education is a dialogue between the student, teacher, and the curriculum. Students are viewed as problem solvers, and problem solving and inquiry approaches are employed for emphasizing cognitive skills. Cooperation, on the other hand, represents the best means to approach mastery of a fundamental knowledge. Once students become reasonably conversant, they are ready for collaborative activities, ready to discuss and assess. The benefits of small group learning in a collaborative environment are discussed here. So, one is celebration of diversity. When students learn to work with all types of people, it promotes diversity. Acknowledgement of individuals' differences. When a question or questions are raised, different students will have a variety of responses. Each of these can help the group to create a product that reflects a wide range of perspectives and is thus more complete and comprehensive. Next is interpersonal development. Students learn to relate to their peers and other learners as they work together in a group enterprises. This can be especially helpful for students who have difficulty with social skills. Next is actively involving students in learning. Each member has opportunities to contribute in small groups. Students take more ownership of their material and think critically about related issues when they work as a team. More opportunities for personal feedback. Because there are more exchanges among students in small groups, students receive more personal feedback about their ideas and responses as the group size is small. Many different faculty members have developed and used approaches to teaching that fit the criteria for learner-centered pedagogy. Many different terminologies you will be finding these are used, and sometimes these are used interchangeably. Some other terminologies may include active learning, inquiry-based learning, problem-based learning, team-based learning, inquiry-guided learning, and project-based learning. So now let us discuss about assessment in learner-centered pedagogic perspective. Like any good assessment, student-centered assessment articulates appropriately challenging and developmentally appropriate learning targets. It also provides feedback to students, teachers, districts, states, how to defend the learning. It is valid and reliable for the given context, and it is practicable and efficient. It is individualized. It focuses on learning and growth of the students. It is motivating. It is amenable to actively engaging students in the regulation of their own learning, and it is informative and useful to a variety of audiences. Let us discuss these features. Firstly, the feature of learner, that is learner-centered assessment, is that it is individualized. Individualized assessment involves differentiating learning targets, assignment and task, providing focused feedback of students, and adjusting teaching and learning processes as needed. Secondly, learner-centered pedagogy focuses on learning and growth. Learner-centered assessment promotes learning and growth by providing useful feedback to the students themselves, their teachers, and others about what the students need in order to progress towards the learning target. Thirdly, learner-centered assessment involves the active engagement of students in setting goals for their learning and growth, monitoring their progress towards their goals, and determining how to address any gaps. Also called self-regulated learning, the ability to manage one's own learning and growth is a key type of experiences needed for 21st century career and success of children. Classroom assessment practices such as self-assessment, peer assessment, and portfolios have the potential to not only help students learn core content knowledge and skills, but also to develop important self-regulatory habits and behavior among students. Fourthly, it is motivating. Many people associate being evaluated with mild to moderate anxiety, not motivation, and research has shown that grades can be associated with decreased motivation and lower achievement. Formative assessment, particularly detailed task-specific comments on a student work can activate interest in a task and result in better performance. Some of the examples of learner-centered assessment are diaries, logs and journals, portfolios, peer self-assessment, learning contacts and negotiated assessments, projects, group works, profiles and many others. Brown, Rost and Gibbs in 1994 have suggested the framework for assessment in learner-centered pedagogy. We will be discussing this. The assessment processes by involving students at the stage when the task is set and involving students at the stage after the task is completed are discussed here. Firstly, assessment process and student-centered learning involving students at the stage when the task is set. Here, choosing the assessment task, then setting the assessment task, discussion on the assessment criteria and setting the assessment criteria. Similarly, involving students at the stage after the task is completed may involve making assessment comments, making peer assessment feedback comments, suggesting self-assessment grades or marks, negotiating self-assessment grades, marks, assigning self-assessment grades and marks, assigning peer assignment grades, marks. Let us discuss about implementing learner-centered pedagogy. Evolving to learner-centered approaches can be challenging. It is human nature to be uncomfortable with change. However, knowing the potential obstacles in advance and planning can help us better prepare for implementation of this approach. It takes dedication and ingenuity to adopt learner-centered pedagogic approaches in our classroom processes. To increase our chance of successfully implementing learner-centered approaches, it is important we understand the potential obstacles we might face. Interestingly, the primary challenge to change comes from students and teachers. The four most commonly encountered reasons for resistance, it may be from student side, are firstly, learner-centered approaches require more work. Sometimes it is viewed that more work is to be done by teachers and students. Yes, but this will lead to meaningful and contextual learning. Secondly, learner-centered approaches are threatening. So some people say that it is threatening. It is a myth. Keep in mind that the most of a student's life, he or she has been told that to do what to do know by the teacher in a teacher-centered class environment. Imagine their reaction when they discover that in a learner-centered classroom, the details about what to do, what the right answer is, and who is responsible for what is suddenly less clear than they have come to expect. Thirdly, some students are not ready for certain learner-centered approaches. It is said that sometimes a student truly is not ready to become the independent learner that is necessary for him or her to get the most out of the learner-centered teaching learning practices. If this is the case, you may need to either revise the activity or create bridging experiences to prepare them for that particular activity. You will also need to enact strategies that motivate students to accept the responsibility for their learning. For example, one effective strategy is to demonstrate your own personal commitment to the learning. If students can occasionally see how their teacher is working through a current problem with their job, they can become more aware about the bigger learning picture beyond just grades. Additional practical actions you can take to motivate students accept learning responsibility which can be found. Students do come around and begin to appreciate learner-centered pedagogy. Some methods and actions may work better than others for overcoming students' resistance to learner-centered teaching. The key is not to give up. Continue trying new things until you find something that works, because students deserve the clear benefits of this educational approach despite their initial resistance. Colleagues sometimes may resist learner-centered teaching or pedagogy due to some perspectives. Some faculty and administrators may become alarmed with the learner-centered teaching plans for a variety of reasons. Some of the common reasons your colleagues may not agree with you or your approach may be: one common reason is the belief that you are not covering enough content. If you switch off your course from a teacher-centered approach to more learner-centered one, you will not need to redefine the role of a content. Remember, the role of the content in your class is to guide the knowledge base students must acquire. and to provide an opportunity for developing learning skills within that knowledge area. A learner centered pedagogy uses content to accomplish this, while a teacher centered approach just covers all the content that can fit into the course. It is more important that the students learn how to use their acquired knowledge rather than know all the facts presented in the vacuum of a classroom. Another common reason for colleague resistance is the belief that only very advanced and mature students would benefit from this type of teaching learning practices. Your colleagues may not believe that beginner students can learn enough from these methods and need to be schooled in the basics first. However, this is a widely accepted misconception. Learner-centered approaches can benefit any student despite their educational standards and starting point. The third common reason is that faculty sometimes feel threatened when shifting the responsibility for learning to the students. It is difficult, especially for experienced teachers, to let go of complete control in the classroom and share power with students. The nature of learner-centered pedagogy shifts the balance of power in the classroom. In order for students to learn, they must be given more opportunities and responsibility to engage with the concepts and construct their own understanding. What does the power shift look like? It doesn't entail handling all the power to the students and losing control as a leader. There is a reason you are the teacher. The power shift is more about sharing responsibility for learning with the students. In this session, we have discussed strategies and implementation of learner-centered pedagogy. In the previous session, the concept, needs and strategies of learner-centered pedagogy were discussed. The teachers have to harvest and contextualize pedagogy as per the need of the context and situations. The pre-service as well as in-service teacher education program needs to be designed and implemented in such a way that the learner-centered pedagogy is planned and implemented effectively in the classrooms. Friends, thank you for listening to me.